What's up? Welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here in another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? We got a big one this week. Part of that is because I was away part of last week, so I missed some stuff last time. Notably, the conclusion of the Sympathizer on HBO, the conclusion of Hack Season 3 on Max, and the new Aespa album, Armageddon. In addition to that, of course, we had another week, so more K-pop from Badvillain, more TV with FX and Hulu's Clipped, as well as the Star Wars series The Acolyte, and also the anime film Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle. So that's a lot of stuff. Wide range here, of course. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist linked below. Let me know it's good, and let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Badvillain's debut single album, Overstep. Badvillain, the new 7-member girl group on one of the smaller K-pop labels, BPM Entertainment. They've been doing some teasers, doing some hinting on social media. They released the song Hurricane on YouTube only. It's not on this release. But then we just got Overstep today. 3 singles, Badvillain, Yahoo, Baditude, and Plus 82. So they've released 4 songs to this point. For a debut, I think Badvillain's single album Overstep is a solid proof of concept, proof of talent. They're an intriguing group. They've got I think a lot of comparisons on the marketing side of things, a lot of comparisons to Baby Monster. I think musically, a lot of comparisons to XG. I think a lot of that's overall pretty reductive, but Badvillain have proven with these 4 songs thus far, they have legitimate rap chops. The hip-hop talent is there. There's also a lot of focus on the performative elements, the dance elements. You can see it in all the videos they put out this far. They definitely bring it on that front. And I think what Badvillain will need moving forward is just, I think, stronger song structure, stronger melody, because the chorus on the songs that they've put out thus far are pretty sparse, pretty understated. It's a lot of time the instrumental doing a lot of the work. In general, most of these songs are quite short, only even having one chorus to their name at that. So this is very much the very beginning of this group, but I'm certainly intrigued by what I've heard thus far. You start with the pre-release single Hurricane, again, only on YouTube. I don't know why you wouldn't just tack this on to the official single, which again is 7 minutes long, add on the other song. Because again, Hurricane, it's also short. It's about 70 seconds, and it's really kind of a cipher-esque song. It's just a lot of bars, a lot of rapping, and then a bit of outro singing, and then the song's over. And I do, for what it is, kind of a brief taster type song, I did find it pretty compelling. For the Badvillain music video, for the title track, I thought the villain imagery, the prison lineup and the robber mask, they're really leaning in to this kind of branding, and I do think it's pretty funny. The chorus of that song, which is definitely the strongest, most noticeable chorus of all their songs thus far, really highlights kind of the orchestral flourishes of the beat, kind of pretty enjoyable for what it sounds like, but vocally, again, it's just very the la-di-da-di-da stuff. It's just kind of blah, honestly, because it's just not much of a vocal hook at all. And then the outro, a bit overdone, a bit over the top, not dissimilar from a lot of other K-pop outros these days. It's a bit of a trend, an unfortunate trend we have thus far. With Yahoo Baditude, I really enjoyed the bass line on that song. I think the first verse, the singing especially, stands out. Probably some of the best pure singing on the release. Again, another vocally light chorus. I want stronger hooks than what we've been giving. It's basically just the beat and then some simple Yahoo refrains. It's very light. It's very simple. But that song is also so short. You get that chorus literally just once and then the song's basically over. And then Plus 82, another 1 minute long song, but really hard rapping. I love when the horns drop in. I do find it a bit corny to hear a K-pop girl saying spin the block. It just doesn't sound genuine. But again, I think the rapping skill, the technical ability, the flow is pretty good with this group thus far. So ultimately, it's not a lot of material. So we're wait and see in terms of the higher ceiling, but I think there's a baseline level of talent, that's for sure, especially with the rapping, certainly with the dance from what we've seen thus far. And I think with some stronger writing, punch up some of these choruses, just make some more fully formed songs. A lot of these songs are so short that it's hard to be too critical of them because they're not really being presented as fully formed sonic ideas. They're just not really that yet. But I think we're wait and see on the ceiling, but there's certainly a strong proof of concept here. And in general, I'm rooting for smaller K-pop labels whenever they release a group that has a bit of buzz. I mean, BPM Entertainment, they've released debuted Viviz a few years ago, and Taemin's solo work is also on BPM. But we're seeing smaller groups break through here and there, smaller label groups. Look at Kiss of Life earlier this year, or of course 50/50 last year, and of course G Idol has shown exactly how high you can achieve on a smaller label, depending on what kind of group you are and if you can really deliver. So their ceiling is not capped by any means, but I'd like to hear more music, and I would not be shocked if we get like an official, EP mini album later this year as well, because we're going to need to hear some more. But as I've been saying very frequently, the K-pop fourth generation, especially on the girl group front, continues to stay competitive. New group after new group, hit group after hit group. Badvillain has the work cut out for them. There's a lot of competition, but that's what makes it so fun. But let me know, what did you think of Badvillain's debut single album, Overstep? What was your favorite moment? What do you want to hear from this group next? More K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Aespa's debut album, Armageddon. We've been waiting for the full-length Aespa release for a few years at this point. That being said, this album is only one song longer than the Girls EP from a few years ago. Nonetheless, we wanted the full-length Aespa, at least I've wanted it, because I've continued to really push and hope for Aespa to really focus in on what their sound, what their sonic identity would be. And I feel like in the past, I've always been often kind of damning them with faint praise, because Aespa is so clearly vocally talented, and when you hear the live singing from them as well, it really stands out, especially among a lot of their peers in the fourth gen. But I've never been in love completely with any of their releases thus far. I think conceptually there's been some interesting elements in terms of the kind of electronic, like AI, like branding of their vision, lyrically. But a lot of the songs, especially a lot of like the title tracks, have kind of left me cold, and often there's like B-sides from them, like last time with Don't Blink, or of course one of the debut singles, Next Level. Like when their songs hit, they really hit, because again, this is just a group that's very clearly quite talented, but SM has never really focused them in just the way I've wanted. However, Aespa's debut album Armageddon to me is clearly their best release to date, and their most sonically diverse music they've ever made. To me, this is Aespa finding their sound. This is Aespa putting it all together and really delivering on the consistent promise I've heard on the past few releases. But with Armageddon now, I feel like we're really getting the return on all that promise, all that investment. There's just a lot of interesting music here. There's a lot of interesting production choices here. And I think Aespa, we know they have the vocal talent, but on Armageddon, across these songs, they're also quite involved vocally, doing a lot of different things as well. So I think it's hardly boring at all. There's almost every song here has a lot to it, a lot of switch ups and vocal flair. Like there's, I think, a lot to be excited about with this release, just because to me, again, this is Aespa really kind of doing all these things at once consistently for the first time. Starting off with track 1, which was the lead single, Supernova, you have a very kind of uncommon sample here, the Africa Bambaataa Planet Rock sample. You don't get a lot of Western samples in K-pop music, especially something so overt, so blatant, but it's pretty cool. To me, I think the verses are the most fun aspect of this song. I don't really love the chorus. To me, it's kind of in line with where I think some of the weak choruses of their past have been. Like, I'm looking at Drama specifically. It's not quite to that degree in terms of repetitiveness, but it's not my favorite thing about the song. I think when the beat flips around like the bridge and you get the strings popping in, I think the song, again, just pretty involved production wise. And then we have the second single, track 2, Armageddon, the title track. I mean, I love Karina rapping on this. She almost always sounds very good as an MC. I'm very impressed with her usually as a rapper. Definitely here. Winter on the chorus, unsurprisingly, really good, but also quirky. Like I enjoy, again, like there's a lot of personality across this whole release, and you get on a song like this. Of course, when you hear like the high notes from Winter, and at the end, those like really stand out. But like to me, like this is again one of those like involved songs. Armageddon, there's a lot of flair on this production and vocally, and I thought it was just really impressive. And I love the doubled vocals at the end of the outro, at the first time you're even hearing them on the song. Again, a lot going on. Track 3 set the tone. Probably my favorite song on Armageddon, just because this is like hard rapping from Aespa. Like, it's very aggressive, and I just love the attitude on that. I think it definitely delivers. Consistent bass drums, strong hook, fun outro. The We Set the Tone hook, very catchy. I think this song's great. Fourth track, Mine. I think this one's just okay. Again, the chorus doesn't really wow me, but the verses are pretty solid. But to me, the outro, I think, a bit overproduced. Most of this, I don't think, is overproduced at all. Again, I'm happy with the production, but I think in this instance here with Mine towards the end is a little too much. Licorice, I thought this one was pretty bouncy, kind of an underwritten chorus again. I guess this is the lyrical sequel to Spicy and Sweet, if you will. Just an okay song. Bahama, though, I wasn't expecting this. Very fun tempo, breezy chorus, very summery, very island vibe. Not really something they've done all that much before. So it stood out to me just for it being kind of different, even if it kind of feels, I guess, out of place sonically across the rest of the album. But it was interesting. Looking at some of the other songs here. Long Chat, I think the delivery is probably fun on that. Prologue, you get the classic winter belting vocals. You know them when you hear it, just because she can do that, unlike few people can. So it sounded pretty cool. Just in general, like everyone on that song, I think the vocals are very strong, very silky singing. Live My Life, another kind of new dabble here where you have this big chorus, but the drums are big, the guitar really for the first time, kind of very energetic, almost like pop rock leaning, especially for Aespa standard. I think this one would be pretty fun live, though, just from how it sounds. And then Melody, just kind of a whatever outro to me. But again, given the label issues SM had last year, given the, to me, inconsistent project output from Aespa, I'm very pleased with how Armageddon sounds. And as we've talked about all the time, it's very competitive space right now with K-pop, with the fourth gen girl groups. And I think Aespa clearly had the vocal talent behind them, clearly on the big label with the backing. But now we're also getting, I think, a really fully conceived, delivered on project with this full-length album. And I think it's exciting that they're now, to me, humming on all cylinders, like at their absolute best with this. And we know a lot of the other peers are doing the same. Just a fun time to be a fan. But let me know, what did you think about Aespa's debut album, Armageddon? Do you agree it's their best work to date? Either way, let me know why. And for more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Hacks Season 3, out in full, now on Max. Hacks, I think at this point, 3 seasons in, the kind of rhythm that this comedy drama series does to us, I think is getting familiar, but in a good way, because the show continues to repeat some patterns, even if it changes up how it goes about those things. Overall, I quite like Season 3. I thought it was really strong, kind of start to finish, and again, comparing it to the past of Hacks, the past 2 seasons, and how it differs from those, I think is pretty interesting. Also notable that Hacks was renewed for a 4th season, despite this being, a Max original show. Most of those have been fallen by the wayside over at Warner Brothers Discovery. Of course, this is not produced by HBO proper. It's a separate silo. But I think clearly the Emmy love, critical love, and the solid ratings, all things considered, clearly keeping the show going. And I think that's great. It's really well deserved. But coming into Season 3, I liked the dynamic they gave us, as Jean Smart's Deborah character has gone, up and down, literally being a titular hack in the beginning, but then kind of getting back up to the top of the mountain in terms of the comedy world at the end of Season 2. It was interesting, right? And them being split apart with the Season 2 finale, Ava and Deborah, it's like, oh, it's a new dynamic again. And then quickly, they're brought back together on Season 3, and I think the dynamic between Smart and Hannah Einbinder, the Deborah-Ava dynamic, it's clearly the heartbeat of the show. It's the only reason the show can work, and it makes sense that them coming back together would happen, because that's kind of the only way this show can work. But that doesn't mean there's not room for conflict. And I think that's kind of the core success of Hacks Season 3, is that Hacks was able to really focus on this relationship at the detriment to most of the other cast, which I'll get to, but really focus on this relationship and kind of make it deeper, right? As Deborah has gotten more and more successful over the course of this series since we've been watching it. She has been, increasingly cold and unwilling to sacrifice for Ava, just to briefly summarize everything that's happened, of course. And all that comes to a head in the Hack Season 3 finale. And I really love the decision they make in the finale, where Ava knows that her career is best served by working on Deborah's show when she does get Late Night. The whole pursuit of Deborah becoming the new host of Late Night, despite her age, despite her gender, that I think was a pretty fun carrot for the show, even if it wasn't necessarily like the primary focus of any individual episode per se. I think a lot of the dynamics we saw in Hack Season 3 could have lent themselves to a lot of different plot, if you will, but the Late Night stuff worked. Anyway, having Ava attach back on to Deborah after being rejected again in this finale, and basically twisting the knife and, basically threatening to blackmail Deborah. So now we're keeping our two core characters together, but putting them back at odds again. I just love how this show continues to reinvent and find new ways to keep this dynamic fresh, because we know they have the chemistry. But I think it was going to be a challenge as Deborah found all this success again as a character, and I think to the creators' credits, to the creators' credit, though, they've really, again, found a way to keep it fresh, keep it honest and genuine. And frankly, it's a really satisfying way for this season to conclude, because I think there was a lot less of this ongoing tension present throughout most of Season 3. I think, in a sense, Hacks had kind of become a bit more of a vibes show, a bit more of a hang show. And I think a big part of that was that most of the supporting cast had their least significant arcs to date. I mean, Carl Clemens, Hopkins, Marcus, Deborah's manager, he's never had less to do on the show than he did in this season. Poppy Lou, for example, is Kiki. She's in one scene, one and a half scenes in one episode. Caitlin Olsen as Deborah's daughter probably has the best piece of the supporting work to me. I think the roast episode was really funny and nicely timed with the comeback of roasts, with the Tom Brady roast on Netflix in real life. Christopher McDonald as Marty, of course, less involved with the show now that Deborah's not working and living in Vegas anymore, full time anyway. But he does have some interesting moments during the golf episode. His character's relationship with Deborah paid off a little bit from the past seasons anyway. And then you have, of course, Kayla and Jimmy, Paul W. Downs and Megan Stalter's characters. And, I always have found them pretty superfluous to the show. It's kind of clearly a function of hey, they're part of the cast, they're part of the ensemble, they're, starring characters and not recurring characters, so they're just going to be around. But it all felt so superfluous this time around. I thought all the kind of payoff with the relationship, working relationship, and the Catherine Newton cameo in the finale and related to that, I don't know, I just wasn't super invested in that stuff. Even the pickleball episode was fun, the pickleball scene from them. The best guest spot clearly was the Christina Hendricks episode. Her dynamic with Hannah Einbinder was absolutely hilarious. That was some great shit in terms of Christina Hendricks just playing this dominant power lesbian woman. Really great. In general, I loved the golf outing. I loved Deborah really switching it up and just dominating out on the links when she knew she had lost Late Night. That was great. The Christmas episode, I think, was good, although J. Smith Cameron as Deborah's sister, I didn't really love that performance. Of course, J. Smith Cameron, amazing on Succession most recently, but I don't know, just didn't quite feel like she could match the energy of Jean Smart in a lot of those scenes. Not that she was bad per se, just didn't feel like the most accurate casting, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think all in all, I'm really happy the show's continuing because I think it's a really strong example of a show that's able to really pay off like old story and existing dynamics because it's just all character, like what this show does. So I think even if this was a weak Marcus season, like he didn't get to have we didn't watch Marcus tell Deborah he's leaving and not going to work for her anymore. That'll happen in season 4 now. And I think that has room to be interesting. But in terms of what we actually got in season 3, it wasn't a whole lot. But I'm hopeful for season 4. I would not be shocked if that comes back around next year, honestly. Depends how quickly they get to filming. If they start filming second half of 2024, maybe in the fall or something, there's a chance. We'll see. But yeah, I'm happy that this is kind of one of the more consistent things we have on Max. Talking about the Max shows on HBO in terms of renewed series, apart from House of the Dragon. What else is coming back on HBO and Max besides Hacks? Of course, Industry's coming back for season 3 in August. Can't wait. But Euphoria is years and years away officially at this point, if it ever does in fact come back when it's all said and done. The Last of Us is coming back. Righteous Gemstones. Tokyo Vice might be done. It's not a lot right now. Of course, White Lotus as well. There's stuff. But I think in terms of the comedy side, right? HBO has a track record with comedies, but this has been obviously the most consistent comedy series they've had since the conclusion of Veep a few years back. That's kind of obvious. But yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about Hack Season 3? Were you happy with some of the narrative changing and evolution, or were you a bit disappointed in the kind of weaker ensemble arcs? Either way, let me know how you felt about the season. And for more TV reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of HBO's The Sympathizer. The miniseries is out in full now on HBO. Of course, Sympathizer, a book adaptation from Park Chan-wook. Director Park co-wrote all the episodes, directed the first 3 as well. And this was a show that I think had a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation going in because, of course, it's adapting a critically acclaimed book that's not super old either, relatively recent novel, and, of course, has the producing involvement of Team Downey and, of course, the acting involvement of Robert Downey Jr., with Robert Downey Jr. kind of flashily, perhaps gimmickly, portraying several different characters over the course of the series. And I was, invested really just because it's Park Chan-wook returning back to TV, and I loved his first TV show, The Little Drummer Girl, on AMC back in 2018. And, of course, Park Chan-wook making a show for HBO, I have no qualms or doubts about its quality. And I think The Sympathizer is a strong miniseries, but it's ultimately a show that I didn't love as much as I wanted to. I have a lot of admiration for this show. There's a lot of craft. There's a lot of really strong filmmaking, especially in the beginning under director Park, but also Fernando Meirelles and Mark Munden, very accomplished directors in their own right as well. The show looks great, has awesome production design, really fun camera techniques and wipes and whatnot. That whole package is there. Ultimately, though, what left me a little bit cold to the show, which again, I enjoyed the show. I'm happy I watched the entire run. I just ultimately was a little bit lacking in a hook, in a forward momentum to some of the conflict with the show. And I think my biggest hang up with The Sympathizer, having now seen the whole series, is the framing device that the series is presented in, where you have Captain in a North Vietnamese or Vietnamese re-education camp post the fall of Saigon, post the Vietnam War. So we know he's returned to Vietnam, and now he's being interrogated by the people on his side. Of course, the captain was a spy for the North, spying on the South, serving, one of the Southern generals, whatnot, right? Because we start in media res with that framing device, we know what happens to the captain. To me, it kind of kills a lot of the stakes. It was a bit frustrating to go back and forth and going over his confession. And I just didn't feel like there was a lot of payoff with the keep re-editing and redoing of the confession. Sometimes it's a non-linear narrative. Sometimes Captain is, an unreliable narrator. The show doesn't commit to any of those angles consistently enough for me. And I found it a bit distracting at times. Where the finale goes made sense to me, but just didn't feel like quite strong enough payoff for all the like dick teasing that this framing device was basically doing to us. When we removed all that and we just spent time in the, present, really the past, but just in the moment of whatever Captain was retelling, whether at the beginning of the series, where it's really, I think, grippingly in the days leading up to the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. I think all of that was excellent. But then, of course, when Captain flees alongside the general and his team and his family, and flees to America, and we watch Captain ingratiate himself into American society, and watching this Vietnamese community kind of popping up and trying to establish themselves while still having a desire, an inkling for a free, Republic of Vietnam and whatnot. All of that to me, I found quite compelling, and I just I feel like I just get pulled out of it when we flash forward back to Captain at the table trying to retell his confession. I don't know, I got a little frustrated by how that went. Ultimately, like, the show is pretty broadly successful with what it's trying to tackle in terms of what identity means to someone, what culture means to someone. Of course, Captain is a biracial man, French father, Vietnamese mother. There's a twist-ish in the finale about we see who his dad is, and I don't know, like, to me that didn't really need to land per se. More than anything, I guess I have admiration for the Sympathizer because it's a Vietnam War era story that's actually focused on Vietnamese characters, the Vietnamese perspective, and in fact you get a lot of those perspectives with this because we're looking at both sides of the conflict with the Vietnamese perspective for both sides. So, like, there's a lot of good, I think, meat on that bone, and especially the kind of post-war perspective I thought was quite eye-opening. Again, because we don't really get a lot of that side on the Western filmmaking front, and the Sympathizer is literally acknowledging that because in episode 4, one of Robert Downey Jr.'s characters is a Hollywood film director, obvious stand-in for Francis Ford Coppola, and filming Apocalypse Now. I loved everything with the movie set. I loved everything with the general's daughter, Lana, and her willingness, openness to assimilating into American culture. And then you have the juxtaposing that with the general's really steadfast desire to latch back onto the old ways and take back what was lost. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Of course, Captain never quite knowing exactly where his allegiances lie. I was actually expecting that to be a little bit more played up than it ends up being. He seems pretty steadfast throughout the run of the series, even if ultimately he's having regrets when he has to commit the two murders and the ghosts that are literally haunting him. Some underrated comedy elements throughout the show. I love the lawyer negotiation, for example, when Captain gets injured on the film set. That was fun. And I do think the first murder, in particular in episode 3, where Captain knows he's basically killing an innocent man who's not the mole, and he's doing it basically to protect his own cover in a certain sense. That was tough. I thought that was played up well. That was gutting. I think Bond as well, and Bond's relationship with Captain is done very well. That also leads itself to the strongest of the Downey characters, which would be the CIA agent Claude character, partially because that's the one we see the most, but to me that's the most effective, that's the most well-rounded. The movie director character is pretty good as well. Then you have the Asian studies professor, which is pretty caricature, pretty one note to me. You have the politician guy, very also kind of one note on the other side of the coin. I could see this being frustrating, like Downey playing all these characters being distracting. It didn't really distract me per se, because ultimately, like, Downey's not the star or even anywhere close to the star of this show. Ho Jan-do really crushes the show, and he has to carry basically the whole thing. Like, Downey just kind of gets to, goof off basically and do very over the top things. And I think when he's playing like a very effeminate gay man is as one of his covers, I thought that was like very caricature and very over the top, kind of frustrating. Other stuff though, it's fun, especially the scene when they're all the Downies are together in the restaurant or whatever. That was pretty fun. But John Day has to do a great job, and I think he really carries the show. Like, and if that performance isn't good, the show wouldn't work at all. So yeah, I think ultimately it's a success, even if I wasn't completely gripped by everything, completely gripped by its conclusion. But having all the craft on the filmmaking side, and then having, I think, really important and prescient and impactful and deep, themes and interests in what it's trying to convey. Very few shows are able to really kind of nail that, especially on the miniseries front, where miniseries can often lean more into just plot payoff, and maybe Sympathizer could have used a little bit more plot focus, I suppose. I certainly would have liked the framing device removed, but nonetheless, successful show. That being said, Director Park, make another movie, please. Decision to leave. Let's follow that up. Let's go. But yeah, let me know, how did you feel about the Sympathizer? Did you have any hangups with aspects of the show? How successful do you think it was in the end? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Clipped, the new docudrama series on FX and Hulu. The first 2 episodes premiered, 6-episode series. This, of course, is adapting the Donald Sterling scandal regarding the Los Angeles Clippers of the NBA back in 2014. This series was created by Gina Welch. Also involved producing and writing was Rembert Brown, former Grantland writer. And it's adapting the 30 for 30 podcast from Ramona Shelburne at ESPN, The Sterling Affairs. And yeah, I think this is interesting to compare because it's easy to think of it as like a spiritual sequel of sorts to Winning Time on HBO, which was canceled last year after 2 seasons because that was adapting, of course, the other Los Angeles basketball team, the Los Angeles Lakers, back in the Showtime era. But really, Clipped is more of the traditional docudrama that we've been getting a lot lately on TV, a lot on the miniseries front, regarding just kind of adapting current events and a big story of some kind fitting into the miniseries mold, a la The People vs. OJ and all the litany of shows we've got since then. That's really what this show is. And, from what I saw through the first 2 episodes, it seems like it's a pretty solid, straightforward docudrama. It's going to go through this situation, this scandal, and we kind of know where it's going to go because it's really just history. And there's probably not going to be too much like extra flair on that. So it's kind of a low ceiling show. But when you have Lawrence Fishburne as Doc Rivers, someone who actually really looks like Doc Rivers in addition to being a great actor, when you have Ed O'Neill playing Donald Sterling, and those 2 guys are really going for it in their performances, I think doing a great job. Oscar winner Jackie Weaver as Donald Sterling's wife, Shelley Sterling, and a really, I think, great kind of out of nowhere like breakout performance from Cleopatra Coleman as V. Stiviano, Donald Sterling's mistress that proceeds to this whole scandal blowing up. The fact that you have these, I think, 4 really good acting performances really helps at least buoy this series a little bit above the traditional expectations we have for a show like this, even if ultimately, I think screenwriting-wise, I think just kind of narrative goal, it's really just trying to adapt recent events. And I think the fact that it's very recent events also is notable here. Like Winning Time, the Showtime Lakers, that was a while ago. Yes, there's tons of people that remember those times vividly, but there's also tons of people that don't. Clipped, though, we're talking about the Lob City era Clippers. That was only, 1 Clipper era ago in terms of NBA history. I mean, Doc Rivers is still an NBA basketball coach. JJ Redick is a massive NBA media member and likely the new Laker coach. Matt Barnes, another active NBA media member. We see Draymond Green opposing the Clippers in the playoffs that year. Obviously a very prevalent person, not to mention still an active player. Like DeAndre Jordan, technically still an active player. Like this was not that long ago. So there's really not going to be, I think, anything super like eye-opening or like informative to most viewers who watch this show because I think everyone just kind of knows the story. That's not necessarily any fault of the show or even much of a demerit, but I just think, again, the ceiling of this show isn't very high just because of the familiarity of the material in addition to the fact that it's a pretty rote, basic storytelling, style that we've got a lot of lately on TV. But I do enjoy the period detail of it all. 2014, it's fun to see like 2014 era Instagram UI. For example, we remember it well. Thankfully, it seems it's not going to really have much of a focus on the basketball of it all because this show also doesn't really compare to Winning Time. Winning Time, the main character arguably is Quincy Isaiah as Magic Johnson, right? But also you had Solomon Hughes as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You had Devon Nixon as Norm Nixon's son playing Norm Nixon. All three of those guys were great actors, but also were great basketball athletes when you film them. And Clipped isn't really going to communicate that. Like, I guess the guy who is playing JJ Redick broadly has JJ's shooting technique, and the guy playing Blake Griffin is light skinned. Like, there's there's not like much to say on the basketball front. I thought it was really funny when I saw Draymond Green pop up, just because like that guy is not Draymond Green at all. Like, it was so clear. They barely even show you a glimpse of Steph Curry in those scenes, just I think because they know they didn't have the goods on that front. But yeah, like they're not gonna, I think, capture the basketball the way Winning Time did, but thankfully that's not the focus. He's have to be in it for the performances, I think. Like I said, Fishburne, O'Neal in particular, really standing out. And I guess, the fact that this is going to get into heavy material, because obviously this scandal was so heinous for what Donald Sterling was revealed to have said and what kind of horrible person he was exposed to be in the most public way possible, leading to him, of course, being forced to sell the Clippers to Steve Ballmer, the current owner of the team. Even though, again, none of that's eye-opening or new and very well documented, in fact, in still recent history, it's going to cover some heavy themes. And yet, Clipped also had a lot of, subtle, like, humorous, comedic moments. There is some levity on this show. So I think that mix will be welcome. And also the fact that it's only 6 episodes, only 4 more left to go, shouldn't make it too much of a watch. I'm planning to get through it and see it to the end. Enjoy it for what it is. That being said, FX and Hulu somehow are finding a way to release Clipped week to week, just like they release Shogun week to week. It definitely benefited Shogun, obviously one of the biggest and best shows of the year, right? Why on earth can't FX and Hulu release The Bear, their biggest comedy series ever, comedy in quotes, but why can't The Bear be released week to week? Why do we have to do a binge drop of a show people are so anticipating? Why can't we stretch that show out? If you can stretch out a show like Clipped, which has a lot less to it, why can't you stretch out The Bear? I don't understand. That being said, when The Bear comes out, I will be covering it, so make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, and let me know, what did you think of Clipped? Do you kind of agree with me that it's more of a kind of basic by-the-numbers docudrama and doesn't really have much of a high ceiling as a TV show, but also you kind of are enjoying the hang and want to see it through? Do you agree with me there? Do you think the show's better than I'm saying? Either way, let me know why. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Acolyte, the new Star Wars series out now on Disney+. The first 2 episodes premiering of an 8-episode season. I have a lot to say on this, took a lot of notes. I really enjoyed the premiere. I think it's a very exciting new Star Wars show, and something we really needed for a bunch of reasons. So I'm going to get into all that, of course, full spoilers. The Acolyte's coming at a great time for Star Wars television, of course. We got the 3rd and final season of The Bad Batch earlier this year, as well as Tales of the Empire, the shorts anthology series, and then The Bad Batch, of course, teased a future animated series with an adult Omega. So we've been eating. And now to get The Acolyte, something that's been in production and in development for several years. Of course, this is the new Star Wars live-action series from Leslie Headland, the acclaimed creator of Russian Doll on Netflix, a show I liked quite a bit. And it has a all-star cast that I think is killing it so far, and we'll get into that. But also is choicely set in a period of Star Wars storytelling that is fresh and new. And this is a show that, because of that, does not require a lot of Star Wars homework, and in fact is, I think, a great jumping in point just for a Star Wars story, because we all know the Star Wars sandbox is so fresh for possibility, and by setting The Acolyte 100 years before the rise of the Empire that, began with the prequel era, setting it 100 years in the past, so to speak, really takes a lot of the pressure off, I think, as for storytelling, right? Because we don't have the Skywalker connection. We don't have the Empire. We don't have a lot of classic, familiar things that to some people might be a bit tired. Star Wars has a vast timeline. Let's explore some of it and know this is not all the way in the past like the upcoming Dawn of the Jedi James Mangold movie will be about, but 100 years in the past, just seeing the Jedi Order during the time when the Republic was still cooking, still flowing, albeit as the decline is beginning or underway. It's a great time, I think, canonically, just to set a Star Wars story. And also, I think some has some of the appeal of what the prequel era is, right? To seeing the Jedi in their prime, seeing lots of Jedi, not a Jedi Order in distress, not a Jedi Order being reestablished. So, again, a lot of fun possibilities. The Acolyte's 2-episode premiere, to me, is really inviting to a new fan as well as rewarding to a longtime Star Wars fan, because the lack of attachment to any pre-existing storytelling by setting the Acolyte 100 years before the rise of the Empire really opens up a lot of possibilities. But thankfully, the Acolyte has incredible production design through these first 2 episodes. The Acolyte was filmed on real sets, just like Andor. This was not filmed on the volume video wall screens like The Mandalorian, and boy does it show. I think the cast, too, is really engaging thus far. Amandla Stenberg in a dual role, Lee Jung-jae from Squid Game in his first English language role, Carrie-Anne Moss, Daphne Keane, Manny Jacinto, Joey Turner-Smith, who we haven't seen yet, Charlie Barnett. Like, we got some people here. The Acolyte is exactly what I think a lot of people have wanted, which is just a fresh new story that you can just jump into and spend time in the ever rewarding Star Wars world. I was very excited watching these first 2 episodes. I thought it was pretty propulsive storytelling. Of course, there's lots of fun nods and things if you're into really deep into the lore, seeing a Wookiee Jedi, for example. There's some cool stuff here. I really can't wait to see what's next. We spent a lot of time jumping across locations. Like I said, I think the production design really stands out. But we're going kind of all over the place. We hit a few planets in these first 2 episodes, but just a lot of different environments. Things feel varied, which I enjoyed. I really like that first scene where we see Amandla Stenberg go and attack and kill Carrie-Anne Moss's character. It doesn't take long for us to learn that Amandla Stenberg is playing a dual role, playing twin characters, Asha and also May. May, presumed dead. Asha, a former Jedi Padawan who left the Order. So when you see this first scene, which I think is a really great fight scene, I think there's a lot of fun use of force powers in this first scene, but just it's pretty kinetic and fun to watch a Jedi Master fight without their saber, do kind of the toying with I'm very powerful technique, but it's pretty compelling. Initially, when we switch over to Asha's perspective, I was like, are they suggesting this was a dream? But then quickly we understand, no, it did happen. Master Indara was killed. So Carrie-Anne Moss in the current timeline of the show is already dead after one scene. So obviously you'll be spending more time with her in flashback. But to me, it really kind of kicks off to the races from there. I like Charlie Barnett as Yord, a kind of by the book, kind of stickler Jedi Knight character. It's a good, fun characterization. Lee Jung-jae as Master Soul, kind of Qui-Gon coded, you could say. But Lee Jung-jae, first English language role, I think he definitely has the serenity when he eventually fights May in the second episode. I think, again, his power is commanded pretty well. But he has the kind of the serenity that you expect from a master. I think the performance is pretty good. Daphne Keane, playing an alien, all maked up, but it's cool to see her. Obviously, she's come a long way since she was very young in Logan, of course. We also briefly see in some supporting scenes Rebecca Henderson as Vernestra, the green alien Jedi. And that's just notable because that's actually a recurring character that's very big in the High Republic comics and novels. The High Republic as a kind of a storytelling vehicle, I believe that began in 2020, 2021. In a few years, been a lot of comics, a lot of novels thus far. There's some nods to it in the last Jedi Survivor video game as well. This kind of end of the Republic, but still in the past time has been quite storied, and I think it's fun that we're finally getting on live action, exposing more people to it. I like Amandla Stenberg in this, kind of lead role, dual role as well, just because, she's been a rising star for a young time, really breaking out at a very young age, way back in Hunger Games, but she's had a lot of awesome roles. I loved her in Bodies, Bodies, Bodies recently, for example, but she's very emotive with her face, with her eyes, and I think that she's just charismatic, and the fact that she has to play 2 roles and seems to be really bringing it her all in the stunts, which apparently she really threw herself into in the production. I'm certainly rocking with it. I thought the prison escape scene was really fun. Also, the show kind of has, more force, elements to it. Asha having visions, visions of her sister, going back in time when they're younger, things like that. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of that, but the mystery of why May being alive, who trained May, some dark user that's hinted at in the first episode, who trained May, but why does May want to kill these 4 Jedi, Jedi Masters? What's up with that? What went wrong? What were they hiding? Obviously, it was something bad because one of them basically admits to fault, willingly taking the poison. That'd be Master Torben, played by Dean Charles Chapman of Game of Thrones fame. I think it's a fun mystery, this also nod of these Jedi doing something wrong, something happened, and we're not exactly sure how mischievous it is. Torben says that they thought they were doing the right thing. This does kind of have a nod to me of how the Knights of the Old Republic comic began with the Jedi Covenant doing something bad as well. So that's just where my mind went. It's a kind of a reference point, a inspiration for this line of storytelling. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that for sure. Dean Charles Chapman as Torben, him just kind of floating there in meditation, this new bearish vow that was introduced in the comics. That's just cool Star Wars shit to see that in action. I enjoyed that. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing him in the flashbacks. We know we're going to see him in Padawan form because, in the trailer we saw him with the braid. We'll certainly get more Carrie-Anne Moss, as we know. Oh, I should note, it was fun to see the Trade Federation and some Neimoidians in the beginning in the first episode. Just a fun nod. Always nice to see them. I thought they looked great too. The makeup design, the prosthetics were really good. It was fun to go to Olega and see another Jedi temple, like a smaller, outpost temple. That's always something that was interesting to me. And again, when the Jedi Order was cooking, there was temples all over the place. Famous places like Dantooine and Ossus and things like that nature. And to actually see one in the flesh, just see Jedi throughout the world doing their Jedi things. And also, hearing from May and Jacinto's character in the second episode, even at this time, the Jedi were still viewed by some as flawed or corrupt, or having their problems, as we obviously come to know it as the timeline progresses. So I'm just really into seeing where this goes narratively. It's pretty cool that the Wookiee Jedi Kelnaka is being played by Junis Sutomo, who played Chewbacca in the sequel trilogy, having taken over the role from Peter Mayhew. So that's a cool kind of continuity behind the scenes thing. If I have one note about the dark user, the one who trained May, who we don't know anything about, the one note I do have is I think the design's a tad uninspired just because it's so familiar, right? Darth Vader, Darth Revan, Kylo Ren, all the Inquisitors, they all look very similar, with the covered face, with the mask, the dark robes. I would just love if there was someone just who looked a little bit different, just for that sake. This unnamed, bad dude, he looks very similar to the Inquisitors, and Kylo Ren specifically. So, alas, I'm curious what it is, there was a lot of ridiculous, absurd bullshit about the lead up to the Acolyte, because Star Wars is such a frustrating fandom to be a part of, because there's so much hot takes and so much bad faith arguing. But so many people were saying that, Ki-Adi-Mundi's quote in the prequels, and it was episode 1, the Sith had been extinct for more than a millennia. That line, that belief of the Jedi Order that the Sith were gone, somehow precludes any dark user of the Force from ever existing in the knowledge of the Jedi in the past. I don't understand how you can be a Star Wars fan and equate those two things. If you were a Star Wars fan, you would know the EU, you would know even other canon. There has always been dark users who weren't Sith. This is not new, and even in this past timeline, with the Knights of the Old Republic and the High Republic, and even before that, again with the EU, dark users existed, dark Jedi existed. So I don't understand why that's some sticking point for people. It's because it's not actually a sticking point, it's just an excuse for people to complain and bullshit about Lucasfilm under Disney and all that shit. So if that's something you actually believe, you're just an idiot, in my opinion. Now, if you don't like the Acolyte because you're not that invested in it, of course, that's totally fine. Now, to me, I'd have a hard time understanding why that would be. I thought this was pretty compelling hook in terms of the mystery, in terms of the performances, in terms of the production design, the forward momentum for the first 2 episodes. I think there was a lot here, again, in that past setting that we've been asking for so long. To me, this is really what we've been asking for. So, I'm looking forward to seeing it through because I have high hopes and I thought it was a really great start. Now, because this is only 100 years before the prequels, there are some familiar faces that are alive and prominent at this time. Jedi Masters on the Council, like Hero Poof and Opal Rancisis, and also of course Yoda. Now, and I believe some of them, all of them, are in, notably, primarily in the background, but in the comics and the novels of the High Republic. Some of them, so they're there. I would not be shocked if one of those, probably Yoda, the most notably, is acknowledged or even shown at some point, but they'll be backgrounded as they should be. We don't want this show to be a Yoda show. We don't want that to be too distracting. Not to mention we get a ton of, quote unquote Yoda with Grogu right now on The Mandalorian. But something to note. But yeah, let me know. What did you think of the Acolyte 2-episode premiere? Are you excited about it like me? Either way, let me know why. And for more movie reviews, TV reviews, Star Wars, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle, the sports anime film out now in the US after releasing back in February over in Japan. This is the second highest grossing Japanese film of the year, and has been a pretty solid success. I think it's like top 40-ish all-time as far as Japanese grossers go. Of course, this movie is coming off the kind of breakout whirlwind success that was the Haikyuu anime series, which ran 4 seasons from 2014 to 2020, and really one of the most significant new animes of the 2010s. Not on the Attack on Titan or Demon Slayer level, but certainly a really big breakout series. And kind of interestingly, I know definitely polarizing to the hardcore fans, rather than conclude the series with a 5th season, Production IG, the studio, decided to make 2 final films to complete the series instead. Haikyuu Final and The Dumpster Battle is the first of these final 2 films. That's certainly an interesting decision, because on one hand, I love getting the films as a movie first person. On the other hand, from what I've gathered, Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle is trying to capture 30-something manga chapters, whereas a traditional episode of the anime series would capture about 5 in a 22-minute episode. So, judging by that math, you would want this movie to be about an hour longer than it ended up being. It's only an hour and 25 minutes. And I have to say, it moves pretty quickly. Now, the other thing I have to say is that I have not watched the first 4 seasons of Haikyuu. So I have a very specific opinion that is probably not even that valuable to someone who is a faithful fan of this series. But I do think the perspective of somebody new to the series, just kind of jumping into this, I was just very curious how it would go, and I wanted to really compare it to what was it like to watch the first Slam Dunk last year, which of course was the years and decades later in a follow-up to or prequel follow-up to the Slam Dunk anime series. The first Slam Dunk I actually found pretty effective at inviting in a new viewer who doesn't know the series or the manga. And Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle, I don't think is nearly as successful at doing something like that. Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle very much throws you in as a viewer. This is straight up a direct sequel to Season 4. It does not have any hand-holding at all if you do not know this series very well. This is very much just a progression of the plot. The whole movie is focused on one match at the Spring Nationals 3rd round tournament between the rival high schools, Karasuna and Nakoma. So if you don't know that dynamic, you don't know these characters, you're not going to be that familiar, that much more familiar by the end of the film. The movie really doesn't spend much time trying to invite anyone new in. I think, and there's merit to both premises, right? Where this is really trying to serve as if this was part of season 5. So you wouldn't expect the 5th season of a series to take its time to reintroduce all the character relationships and dynamics that a viewer of the first 4 seasons would know. It makes sense to me. I understand why it's not that inviting. On the other hand, I also found the movie pretty fun, despite not really knowing much about it. I think a big part of this, too, is I have a pretty unique relationship to Haikyuu. I have not watched the show, but I have watched, I believe, one of the OVA recaps of the show, because last year when I was in Japan in my Airbnb in Hiroshima, I was using the smart TV remote to turn on YouTube. Of course, the keyboard on YouTube, the TV remote itself was all in kanji. I don't read Japanese, so I could not easily switch the language to like start typing in English. So I was very much just at the mercy of what I could click to. And I was able to click to, I think it was one of the Haikyuu OVAs. So I watched them. I watched it for a long time. No subtitles, of course. Those were also in Japanese. So I really did not know what was going on. I just watched a lot of imagery, a lot of action of this series. And I was like, this is actually pretty cool. I'd love to know what's actually going on. And it's kind of a similar relationship I had way back in the day when I saw the Prince of Tennis advertised on Toonami. I was like, sports anime? What's that? They have those. That's so cool. And Haikyuu being about volleyball, a high school volleyball team, and not having like superpowers, right? It's very much grounded in the dynamics of the sport, but also the character drama. It's like, oh, this is like actually like really sick. I would love to watch this. I did seek out, or told myself I would watch Haikyuu before the final movies come out. That did not happen. So I went into this movie pretty excited, honestly, just to see what it was like. And I think now, at this point, I will try and watch more of the show before the final Haikyuu movie comes out, just because I do think it's pretty cool. I think the way the series is filmed kind of reminds me of First Slam Dunk. Honestly, the way Slam Dunk does things, where you'll change your angles, you'll change your camera, we'll do slow-mo. They'll film the action of the athletics of the sport in pretty fun and varied ways to make that fun. And of course, they'll then parcel that out with flashbacks and other moments outside of the action of the sport. And from what I understand, the volleyball matches are a lot more, not say drawn out, but like they feel like they really go on. They can be like multi-episode arcs in a certain sense, right? This movie basically spends 30 minutes per set of this one match, and that's all this is about. So there's really no time, again, to explain anything. There's tons of characters that are not participating in the match, talking to each other, commentating on what's going on, whether they're in person watching the match or watching it on TV or whatever. Obviously, I have no idea who any of those people are, but I'm just kind of rolling with it. And also, again, to compare to First Slam Dunk, Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle, the main character of the film, in a certain sense, isn't actually the main character of Haikyuu. The main character of Haikyuu is, of course, Shoyo Hinata with the distinct orange hair. But he's not actually the lead of The Dumpster Battle. The Dumpster Battle film, we spent a lot of flashbacks with his chief rival in the match, Kozume. And I thought that was kind of reminiscent of First Slam Dunk, where the main character of the anime, Sakuragi, is not actually the lead of the film itself. He's a supporting character. So interesting how that goes. I'm curious how like hardcore Haikyuu faithful feel about this, because of course they know these characters, they know these relationships. Like, I'm just picking up on the fly that Shoyu and Kageyena have a long-standing beef, but they're teammates for the greater good type thing. It's just like, you just got to pick it up as you go if you're new to this. I'm curious what spending time with Kozume felt like to fans. I guess for me, it's ineffective for a new viewer because you don't understand any of the character relationships, nor could you really expect to, I guess, because it's a direct sequel, it's not a prequel like the first Slam Dunk. On the other hand, I think it's pretty compelling in terms of how it films things, how it jumps around. I like the structure of it. On the other hand, I don't have the expertise to speak to how effective this is at Haikyuu storytelling, because it's clearly the pacing is sped up for this condensed movie storytelling, where if this was a season of the series, it would probably, unsurprisingly, have a lot more time to go through the same plot. So it's interesting. I'm curious, like, will the final Haikyuu movie be longer than this? Because this did not exactly put me in a place where I felt like this anime series is about to wrap up in 90 minutes. The conclusion of four seasons and a movie. We have one movie left. It felt like there's a lot here, So we'll see. But I still had a good time, despite not really having any familiarity with this. I think I like Production IG in general. They're one of the more prolific anime studios out there right now. They've done all kinds of work. I love their work on Star Wars Visions, for example. Even stuff that doesn't totally work, like the anime film The Deer King, at least, is pretty visually interesting, So they're pretty talented over there. And This film has been very successful. You know, it's kind of funny to me, though, that the first Slam Dunk is the 6th highest grossing Japanese film of all time. When it came out, it was the 5th. And Haikyuu is only like 40th, because the first Slam Dunk had been decades since that had come out, versus Haikyuu is one of the most popular anime we've had, and this has been 4 years since the season 4 came out. You would have thought there would be more activated fans showing up to see this film. So it's kind of that's a bit backward, I guess, to me, how that would go. I just don't feel like nostalgia was enough to really drive First Slam Dunk all the way forward the way it did. Maybe so. I have to say, seeing the trailer, I'm a bit curious about the upcoming anime film about the Blue Lock series. It's a soccer anime. Don't know anything about that one either. Maybe I'll give that a try and just go in blind on that one too. We'll see. But yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about Haikyuu The Dumpster Battle? I assume you have watched the series unlike me, so please let me know what you thought of it as someone who knows what's going on. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, we have a lot of music to get to. Charlie XCX, Peggy Gao, No Worries, Thames, and Kate Renata. Oh, and by the way, 2 more movies. Glenn Powell's Hitman on Netflix, and Bad Boys 4, The Return of Will Smith. So make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify players linked below. Let me know it's good, and I will see you next week.